So we are in Colossians, technically 4. I did read to the end of 3 last time. However, I say that, and I also said that I'd be skipping backwards because I kind of just read from from verse 18 to 25 very quickly. Didn't get to really touch on it, so I did specifically want to touch on it.
And that's like specifically about wives and husbands too. So that's perfect.
I mean, it's not something I ever want to skip, and we took all the time last time to go through verse 17 pretty much, and so I just quickly read. So it's worth going back over any portion of the Bible, but there's no reason to rush through any one section, um, unless you're talking about numbers.
Our
Hey,
Bible reading plans go to die.
yes, yes, yes. All right. All right, verse 18 of chapter 3. I also believe I will share my screen in case any of you want to read along with the same version that I am reading. And I will actually try to remember to scroll because technically I'm reading it from my Bible because there's too many little breaks in this one and it distracts me. So if I forget to move it, just yell at me or something. Wives, submit to your husbands as it is fitting to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service, as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ, for the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. So many people can get stuck in sections of the Bible like this and like to fixate on one passage or one verse or another. Um, you have to read it in its entirety, of course. You can't cherry pick certain things out of it. Verse 18 and 19 go hand in hand together. You can't have one and not the other. So, wives, submit to your husbands as it is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Does anyone else have a different translation that says it differently that they want to read?
Verse 18, wives, be subject to your husbands as it is fitting in the Lord. This is NASB, by the way. Husbands, verse 19, love your wives and do not be embittered against them.
Anybody else?
Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and be bitter against them.
Very similar, yeah, yeah. So, as we are to reflect Christ, this love for your wives, as it's saying here, would be that same Christly love. And anyone who would be willing to want to spin verse 18 in a negative way, uh, wouldn't be doing a very loving thing. So the harder thing of the two is probably not the submit. It's definitely the love. To love somebody the way that Christ loves
Yeah.
the church
Yeah.
is much, much harder than just submitting to something. Not to say that they're both not hard in their own right, but the husbands are being called and the wives are being called to serve each other in this way. One is submitting to the husband, the other is loving their wife and not being harsh with them. And that love is not like loving pizza. That love is the unconditional love that Christ has for the church. The wife and husband relationship is to mirror the relationship between Christ and the church. If you get that relationship correct between you and God, then it's much easier, much, much easier to apply those same principles to your marriage. And it is still hard. As a married man, I can say that it is hard to to always be loving. It's hard to never be harsh. It's hard to show that love and compassion and anything that's wrapped up in that word. I mean, when Jesus takes it back to the word love, saying that basically all of the commandments are wrapped up in that. I mean, that's truly what it is. Uh, Somebody just said, I believe if the love from the husband is there as it should be, the submission on the part of the wife often happens naturally, which is so true. That was Seawolf, by the way. And that's so true. And the husband is called to lead in these scenarios. They are the head of the household, and they are called to be the leaders in both their actions, in their love for their wife, um, and as we continue on in verse 20 and 21, also with their children. So, those of you that aren't married or thinking about getting married, or you are married, it applies to your life no matter what. Because if you're preparing to get married, this is something that you have to prepare yourself for. And even if you're not married and never plan to get married, we're all called to still uphold these same things as at least husbands or men loving in general. Well, and women at the same time. I mean, that's what we're called to do is show love, whether it's, to our spouse or whether it's to strangers, to the poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could add that in anywhere, even to enemies. So it's it doesn't seem, from the outside, if you say all those things, well, we're also called to love our enemies. Well, how much, how hard is it really then to love your wife like Christ loves the church? Well, when you live with somebody day in and day out, uh, if you've ever experienced that, siblings is one thing, but when you're sharing a life, when you become one flesh with someone else, it can be difficult. It has its difficulties because of that exactly. You're taking two people that are different and stuffing them in a situation together to where they have to work everything out. They have to show love to each other. They have to not spend all of their energy and excess on other people and then leave nothing for the other person. They have to make sure that the priority is their spouse. And this is something that I can struggle with for sure. So I'm speaking to myself when I'm saying this as well. But yes, the husbands called to love their wives like Christ loved the church or loves the church and not be harsh with them. And then just like and just like Seawolf said, once the husband leads in that way, it can be very easy for a wife, or easier for a wife, to then do exactly what verse 18 says. The hard thing here is when one party or the other party isn't pulling that weight. It doesn't change, unfortunately, or I should say, fortunately. It doesn't change because one person isn't doing what they should. We're still called to uphold this to the extent of, still following the word of God, of course. But we're still called to uphold the verse that applies to us. Whether husbands, your wife is submitting to you or not, you should still love your wives and not be harsh with them. Same thing, wives, if your husband is not a loving person and is harsh, we are, our women are still called to submit to their husbands. It is a very, very, very hard thing, and I don't say that lightly. That it takes two to make the marriage work. And if you read recent studies on Christian divorce rates and secular divorce rates, unfortunately, there's not too big of a gap, if not, almost identical in some cases. And that's really sad that people that consider themselves to be followers of God that get married and take vows and get married in the sight of God, then still divorced just as often as people that live the way they want to live according to their own flesh. So it's one of the things that I specifically, or we, me and my wife, um, still, remind each other of this. Not the two verses here, but that there's never an idea, there's never a thought that you know our marriage is going to lead to divorce. We didn't get married on that premise that there was ever a possibility. We know that hard things can come. We've seen other married couples go through anything from death of a child to infidelity, and have discussed things like that and said, no matter what, I will do my best to honor this vow that our marriage is one of permanence in this life. And it's a very hard thing to to commit to and to live under every day. I mean, we are going on 9 years, and compared to some people on here, you might be going on 50. I don't know. Um, but definitely apply this section here to your life if you're planning to get married. If it's ever a thought in your mind that it could happen, read over things like this.
Negative 16.
You say negative 16?
Yep.
We're
When he
all
said 50 years, I immediately thought of Justin. I'm sorry.
just
I
because
love you,
he's
brother.
old, he's not. Aren't you
He's
in
like
your
6 years older than me. Calm down.
yeah?
Yes, I'm
Aren't you in your
37.
40s? You're in your 40s, right, Justin?
I'm 46. I would, I couldn't be married for 50 years.
Yeah, I know that.
I
I didn't
know, I know, I
even
know.
even when I
But
said it, I was pretty
that felt
sure.
very
Uh,
good.
by the way, it is Seawolf's anniversary today. She's celebrating 10 years.
Oh,
So everybody go
nice.
woo!
Woo.
Congratulations to many more, to many more. So I mean, even in a situation where you don't think that you may ever be married again, or it's never on your mind, still reading things like this, knowing that this is how God has called us to live if we choose to be married. But maybe even the second portion applies to you. Maybe not by even blood, but there you can influence people in your life, nephews, nieces, um, or just youth in general. So moving on to verse 20. Children, obey your parents in everything, for it pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged.
I just sent the first one to my kid today.
The first what? Verse 20?
Obey your parents because it pleases the Lord.
In context with anything, or you just center verse 20?
Yeah, within context to freaking listen to your parents.
Referring to everyone, or is she at her mom's?
Yeah, referring to her and her mom and her and me.
Gotcha. I can only imagine what.
So I send her verses every morning, but I sent her that one and another one, but I don't remember what the other one was. I told
I
her to meditate on them on the way to school.
I am
So,
constantly worried about my children. Not constantly worried, but I have I have a worry about my children in their teenage years. The older one can already be so much fun sometimes. But verse 21
yeah, they turn
again,
into different kids when they turn.
yeah. I remember my own teenage years well, so I can definitely say that I provoked my parents, but that's exactly why verse 21 here exists, that fathers do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. Does anyone have another version that says that differently? 20 and 21.
Verse 20 NASB. Children, be obedient to your parents in all things, for this is well pleasing to the Lord. And you said 21 as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Fathers, do not exacerbate your children so that they will not lose heart.
It's a good way to say it. So,
The CSB
Children,
has it that way too.
Lucy, do you have your notes Bible out at all? Knock, knock.
Who's there?
I'm sorry. Did you ask me a question?
Yeah, so
If
do
I
you
have my
have,
notes Bible,
uh-huh.
it's in my car.
You don't have it. Okay. No problem. So,
I can go get it.
no, I mean, if you want to, you can, for sure, but you don't have to. Um, so verse 21, because most of the people on this call don't exactly fall under the current um, children obey your parents age there. Uh, especially if have moved out and have have successfully been married or something like that, cleaving to your wife and instead of and being separated from the parents. But 21 specifically, fathers, do not provoke your children. In my time of being a father, I can definitely say that I broke this a couple of times. Um, it is, it's hard to, of course, be in the position to always set the good example and always act and know how to act the right way. And this specifically talking about provoking your children. It's not necessarily how you're caring for them or things like that, but provoking your children, to anger or to emotions in general can definitely be discouraging. And that's what it's leading to here, leaning into. I don't know if anyone here wants to share a story either way of either you being the child that that ever felt like this, or you being a father to where you feel like you failed in this area, or a mother that failed in this area. Does anyone have anything that they want to share there?
I mean, yeah, I can just growing up, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was an old Vietnam guy, but yeah, he would provoke me all the time. He would always just yell at me. It was never an actual conversation. It was just yelling all the time. So when I became a dad, I started out that way, but then I saw how much fear was in my kids' eyes, so I stopped doing it that way. But I still get riled up sometimes, but I actually, this last time my daughter got in a lot of trouble, I went to that verse that we're talking about. And that helped me, between that and my mother, helped me calm down before my daughter got to my house, to not rip into her and actually just have a conversation about what she did. And still, her understanding there's going to be consequences, but I don't want her to feel like she's completely defeated, because that's not going to fix anything. You know, so, but yeah, that's all I got.
So to
I would
go,
also say that I was gonna say there is also applicability to this passage, even if you're not necessarily a parent, but you find yourself involved in either youth group or coaching high school sports. You find yourself in that parenting type role or in that father mother relationship where you're maybe the substitute parent in a broken home situation. There's positions where you might find yourself in that. So I think there's even insight for us who are not necessarily parents in this passage in that sense.
very, very true. And other ways to read this, I'm going to read it a few different ways just to kind of get the full effect of what we're talking about here. I'm going to add in some other words. So, fathers, do not irritate your children. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Fathers, do not embitter your children. Fathers, do not crush your child's spirit. So many things that we can do can cause the child to be disheartened, to feel discouraged. Our expectations, our own expectations of how we feel the child should be or live or act can be discouraging on children. The way that we talk to our children, if it is in a harsh or angry way, can do the same thing. there is a ton of ways that you can negatively impact, of course, but it rolls back to that same word up in verse 19, that instead of provoking, what should we do is we should show love. Instead of harsh treatment and the things that break down people, it's just the opposite. What should you do? Even if your child is not obeying you like they should, like verse 20 reads, still we are called to love our children. Just the same in 18 and 19, how those are married verses and it's speaking to both parties. One has its role, the other has its role. 20 and 21 are the same way. Children should obey their parents in everything, and fathers and mothers should love their children so that the opposite of discouragement can happen, so they can be encouraged, so they can feel empowered, so that they can blossom instead of shrivel. And it's so hard to always be that. There's so many times when I feel that I have personally failed as a father. And I know there was so many times in my life that my father failed me. But breaking those generational curses and moving away from that, it shouldn't be an excuse for me or for anyone else that, well, I'm harsh because my father was harsh with me. So that's how my children are gonna, get treated as well. And we're not sissies in this family. We'll get over it. Well, that's just moving that generational curse right along. We should be, you know, breakers of that. We should break that chain in our generation. It shouldn't be something that continues down the line and we just feel like we need to pass it on because that's what was passed to us.
Absolutely. And I feel like my grandfather did break because his grandfather would yell at him, but he'd also beat the tar out of him all the time. My grandfather, like, he just yelled at me, but he didn't have to hit me because his voice was way scarier than his fists. And his fists were pretty scary too, but he was a boxer, but he never wanted to hit us because his dad beat the crap out of him all the time. So, I mean, it is in a way breaking even when they were yelling at you. Like maybe their parents were worse than that. And they're like, well, I'm never hitting my kid. Well, I'm still going to yell at him, but because they still think that was normal. But
Hey Matt, did you read that from the Amplified translation?
No.
Okay, I put that in the chat if you wanted to see it, but it's verse 21. It says, "Fathers, do not provoke or irritate ha, I'm tongue tied. Harass your children with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating, or or abusive, nor by favoritism or indifference. Treat them with tenderly with loving kindness, so that they will not lose heart and become discouraged or unmotivated with their spirits broken." That's how the AMP translates it.
Makes it a whole lot longer. That's very
Well, that's
interesting.
well, if you know anything about the amplified translation, it's trying to capture the range, like the
The
semantic
range
range
of
of
it, yeah.
the Greek words that are being
And I mean, it
Well,
translated
truly
into
does
English.
mean all those things for sure.
I
Correct.
like
That's why.
Go ahead.
I like that. I like the amplified version on a topic like this much better because it kind of tells a different perspective or a different uh more in detail, because I'm not sure what version you read, Matthew, but um
ESV.
where it says shoot. Um Children submit in, not submit, I don't honor with everything. I don't know. It just, the amplified version just does um it really shows the way you're supposed to love your kid, in my opinion. I guess like
Hmm.
show that love
Well,
and
it's
build
not.
them up in
Yeah,
the way of the Lord and stuff.
I like to say the Amplified is a nice kind of companion Bible. I don't think it's necessarily the best like as your main translation. I think it goes well with having something like an ESV or NIV or a standard translation. I think it sometimes I consult it then Amplified when I'm preparing a message. So I thought I would just look it up and look it up for this. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's a nice tool to have. We have great resources.
for sure. And just what Lucy's, said, you know, certain, or both of you, well, you're both are saying the same thing. Certain spots just like this that need to be expounded on a little bit more. It does for sure help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's what we are called to as parents is to show that love and not carry those generational curses. Immediately, when Justin started talking, it just reminded me of something that just happened not even 30 minutes ago to me, um, where Lucy was playing with the dog, and for some reason she had a belt and she was kind of like popping it a little bit. Um, and unfortunately, I have some trauma there myself. In my younger years, my father was um, very willing to use a belt and on us, all four of us brothers. At one point, it was even a boat paddle. Uh, Sometimes just whatever he could reach. So she's doing that, then came up to me and kind of acted like she was gonna, hit me with it a little bit, and I flinched and I was like, "You're giving me anxiety right now. Like, I have anxiety." And she's just joking, of course, but I'm like, for me, you're making me relive things I don't want to relive. So I mean, you can see how it can affect a child. I'm nowhere near that age anymore, but it's something that I now live with, or at least have that recollection of, to where it's obviously still bothers me that something like that happened in my past, and now I'm still dealing with it somewhat in my present, not as an active fear or anything, but just uh, something obviously came to my mind with that, so causing me active anxiety during that time that she was joking. So
Yep.
obviously I shared that with her, but uh, I mean how easily we can subject our children to those same things, and we're called to be Christ-like in all things. Uh, Not that we could do anything to ruin God's plan for our children. Not that we have the power to completely, derail that plan for their lives, but we do have the ability and the responsibility to raise them up in the Lord appropriately, teaching them how to love. And you can't teach them how to love and love God and love people if you can't show them love.
Hmm.
So,
And yeah, no, I relate a lot to that too. I have a so before I was with my grandparents, I was in a kind of a violent situation. That's how my grandparents ended up raising me. But like, yeah, hands in my face, stuff like that really makes me uncomfortable. Like, I just can't do it, and that's because of a trauma that happened to me from a stepfather. Like, and my daughter too. Like, she apologizes so much, man. And we've gotten better between me and her therapist, but because at her mom, she'll like spill water and get her butt chewed. Like she just gets ripped into so much at her mom's, and her mom says she's a Christian, and so does her stepdad. Her stepdad's more Catholic. But like, I want, like, are you reading these verses in the Bible? When you're reading, like, we're not called to scream at our children. Like, we're not. You know, we're not, like it just says, we're not called to belittle them and stuff. Like when my daughter was struggling with her lying and manipulation, like I'm not trying to make this a complaint session about her mom, but I'm just doing it to prove a point. And her mom's like, well, you're not being very Christian like lately. Like you don't do that to her, like to anybody. You know what I mean? Not in that manner, anyway. For your child. But yeah, it's just weird because for so long, so many religions feel like we're like use the Bible to like to beat your kids to, you know, and to be domineering over your children. Like I don't know where they got that from, but you know, my daughter's mom was raised Baptist, and they're very strict and very domineering over the children and horrible to the women. Like he calls his
Well,
wife names still all the time.
I
Like
mean,
get
I
in there,
wouldn't
be
say
her mission.
all Baptists are like that, but
No, but I mean, like my oldest mom,
Like me.
yeah, but I'm just saying there are like deep rooted Baptist people that are like that. Like my oldest daughter's mom wasn't allowed to come to the church because she was pregnant and there was no father at the time. You know, like she got married, pregnant out of wedlock, so they wouldn't even let her come in the church in South Carolina. You know, so
I would say that's more of a church problem than a
Denominational one.
denomination problem. But
I know. I'm
Correct.
just saying it's actually very common though in like certain denominations is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's very common. That's why. But the South is known as the Bible Belt for some of the deep Baptist behaviors. You know what I mean? So same with Catholics. I don't. You know, I have a lot of friends that they call themselves recovering Catholics, but you know, but because they were raised by with fear and damnation and not with love, like it says in the Bible. So that's right.
I
Not the
just think
Bible confuses me, but people confuse me. Like, where are you finding this stuff where you can be domineering over your children and mean to your children? And like, where does God tell you to beat your child? Like, I don't know. It's
I
weird.
feel like so many people just it's not necessarily their, you know, even the church they go to or the, you know, it's not right to blame it on how you're raised, of course. But so many
No,
people just struggle with those generational curses that they are passing down, you know, and I don't even necessarily mean it in a way of a curse when I say that, like something that is,
Demonic
you
or
know,
spiritual,
truly, yeah, it's a
like
spiritual
trauma.
thing. But yes, more of a trauma, exactly. That just because they experienced it and that's how they were treated, that it's like a learned behavior that they feel like that's how they should
Yep.
treat their children. And
well, yeah, they also cherry pick out of the Bible too. Like, no, they'll just some parents will justify it with the Bible, like just honor your mother and father kind of stuff, and like you're just
yeah,
cherry picking. You know
well,
what I
that's
mean?
exactly what I started with, you know, in the beginning. Uh, and even some that I shared in my own testimony when I was talking on Monday is that a lot of people struggle with. I don't want to say a lot of people struggle, but there's people out there that cherry pick verses like 18 and verses like 20, and that's not the way the Bible is meant to be read. It is a book where yes, you can read verse 20 and say, "Children, obey your parents in everything, for
Yeah.
this pleases the Lord." Well, you know, that is married to verse 21, where the parents are not provoking and not mistreating and not causing anger and not putting their children down.
Yeah.
You know, that's a married relationship there, or married verses there. But that relationship between father and, or you know, child and parent is verse 20 and 21 combined. That they're both supposed to stand individual, that they should listen to their own verse. Yes, just like 18 and 19, that a wife should submit to their husband as it is fitting to the Lord. You know, that does stand by itself. But at the same time, the true way that it's meant to be is that it goes paired with the husband loving the wife in all things. Same way for 20 and 21. Yes, a child should obey their parents in everything, but this is a, verse 21 is the other side of that coin, that in the world, in the picture of what he is trying to get across here, the father is being asked not to provoke the children, not to put the children down, not to discourage the children. Because how much easier is it if you're rearing your children in the Lord, teaching them how to love correctly, teaching them the right things? How much easier is it for the child to obey the parent in everything? Just like what she said earlier about verse 19 and 20. If a husband is loving to their wife and not harsh with them, loving in all things like Christ is to the church, then how easy is it for the wife to then submit to the husband? So, you know, doesn't matter, what church background or even your own background. Try not to use, excuses. And I'm talking to everyone here, not anyone in particular. Try not to use excuses in your life or even about your past for cherry picking your own verse here, because we're not meant to cherry pick the Bible. We're meant to follow it, read it, the whole thing. So many times, even looking up verses, you can pull up Google and type in a specific verse and normally get what you want to get. But don't just pull up one verse and read one verse and think that you've got the whole picture, because it's a book. It is a letter, or, a book or a letter. Pull it up, read the surroundings, understand the context that it is written in. Understand that if it says therefore, it means it's talking about something that just happened. When you read, 18 and 19, if you read 18 by itself, then, men out there that like to spiritually abuse can use this. That, they look at their wife and said, "Well, did you know that the Bible says, wives, submit to your husbands?" "Well, you must submit to me." "Well, husband," or whoever's saying that, "you must not have read the next verse, that is, love your wives." And that love is, like I said, a Christ-like love, like he loves the church. Guess what? He was willing and did die for us. So, you know, read it in its whole entirety. And this is exactly why I wanted to specifically start in 18. We've only done 4 verses in almost an hour.
Yeah, that's why the book of the book of Revelation is always interesting. How like John says, like eat this scroll. It's like you approach the book as a meal, the Bible as a meal. It's not just take what you want. You take it all out. You kind of you chew on it. You think on it. You kind of you think. You can't just take what you want and leave. So
Yeah, and the reason why I shared that with my daughter this morning is this is my reading from this morning when I got up, and like it just like Haley needs to see this because it, you should listen to your parents if they're leading you in the right direction and they're not trying to manipulate you or tear you down. But I give my daughter a lot of advice that I feel would help her a lot, and she's always listening, but she's never hearing. Is the way I put it nowadays. I'm like, are you listening to me or are you hearing me? Like, so
Yeah, there's definitely a difference there.
yeah.
I had plenty of those same moments as a child that I could tune my parents out very very easily.
Yeah. And I told her, I was like, dude, I don't want you to be in your mid-30s when you finally realize my parents were right. I'd rather you figure it out now than 15 years from now, like I did, But I only can make her do what she's going to do. So it's frustrating when you tell them stuff that you know will help for 100%, 110%. You know it will help, and then they just don't do it. It's like, oh my gosh, dude! Like what I'm telling you is a lifesaver. It'll completely change your trajectory in school. You just sit down with your teachers and have a conversation. You know. But anyways, I could go on a whole rant about this, but I'm not gonna. But yeah, context is key. We learned that in Bible college too. That's the biggest thing. And a lot of people need to, oh my gosh, because it's just, if you turn on the TV, man, politicians are cherry picking left and right. And that's just what they do.
Oh yeah,
And it's just
everyone
this
wants
new
to
Democrat, this
spin
new
their own
Democrat.
story.
Yeah, that one in Texas. Like he's the stuff he's saying that it's crazy. But yeah, he's putting his own context to the story and not the actual context of the Bible. So, anyways,
The one of the things I like to point out in relation to this is, uh, people like to sometimes use, you know, their own narrative with the Bible. Um, I wanted to pick out a certain movie in relation to this, but I don't even remember what the movie is rated right now, so I'm gonna look it up before I mention it. Rated. Yeah, yeah. I probably watched this before, in that time period that I talked about in my testimony where I wasn't quite a Christian yet. So I'm
The
saying
PC
this,
era before Christ.
yeah, before Christ. So I'm not telling you to go watch this movie, but there is a movie out there called The Book of Eli. And the context of the movie specifically is that this guy, now again, this is a rated R movie. Please do not go out and watch this. But the guy is traveling with the Bible, trying to essentially take it somewhere so that it can be, it's a post apocalyptic world, trying to take it somewhere to get it, let's just say, manufactured to be, published again and put out to the masses. And there's the antagonist of the story that specifically wants the Bible so that he can control other people with just, the amazing things that can be in it, but how you can spin it and misuse it when you want what you want out of it. It's very easy to do. To cherry pick the things that you want and then quote it as being biblical truth is very, very wrong. So to make sure that, like I said, when you just Google a verse, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of verses that, you can just see that one verse and it's encouraging to your soul, and that's well and good. But if you Googled wives submit to your husbands and verse 18 popped up, and you take that as law that you can treat your wife any way that you want and she has to submit to you, uh, you've missed the point here. So make it a practice, I would say, that if you are reading, if you're trying to look something up, or you're trying to research something, or you're trying to get encouragement for the day, and you pull up a verse, pull up the chapter, or at least pull up, 5 verses before it and 5 verses after it. It takes maybe 30 more seconds to read it, maybe not even that, but it gives you a more broader
mm-hmm.
picture of what you're reading. And
Sorry.
what was that?
No, I was
I didn't mean
agreeing.
to. I didn't mean to yawn as loud as I did. I forgot I
Ah,
was unmuted.
Yeah, way to go. You shouldn't be yawning. It's not human. You know,
so make sure that you are doing that just to get a little bit more out of it, to better understand the context. One of my favorite classes that I got to take in high school was the history of the Old Testament. Yes, when I was in high school, they actually had a biblical class in a public school. Isn't that
Oh,
crazy?
well, in the South, it kind of makes more sense. But yeah, that is crazy.
I don't think they have them
With them.
anymore, just to be honest with you.
No,
But it was there when I went to school, and reading, and it wasn't necessarily that we were looking at the Bible, but we were looking at the history behind the Bible. You know, what was going on during uh, the exile period, and just the whole Old Testament in itself, the history that goes along with it, and then you start to kind of understand, a little bit more of where it's coming from and some of the way that it speaks or talks or it's written. So it's a beautiful thing to also know context. Context is important. So don't just cherry pick things because we can get it wrong. And God wants us to get to know Him and His Word. And cherry picking one verse at a time out of it uh, doesn't give you that full picture. So moving on.
Verses and chapters are later. Verses and chapters are a later invention. They're not there in the original.
Correct. It's what we're
say
reading now is
journaling.
truly a letter. A letter that someone hand wrote. There was no computers, people. This was
No chat
handwritten.
GPT.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't have spell check. I don't know how good he was at spelling in his own language, but um, this was a letter written to the Colossians, delivered and circulated around so that, or read aloud in the church of Colossians. In some cases, with other letters, it was circulated around to multiple churches, like the ones that went to Asia Minor and whatnot. But just make sure that you don't cherry pick it. Um,
I
moving on, bond
just
servants.
journaling when you read it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the Book of Eli
Bonds.
is a great movie, but
Still
great
not
movie.
recommending people watch that, but I'm not going to recommend people watch anything like that. But um, bond servants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance of your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So, not that any of us are necessarily bond servants, but the rest of that passage can directly apply to most of us. That we do work for other people, most of us, whether you're working for a customer or you're working for an employer, somebody is paying you money to do something, most likely. So it can be hard to go into a workplace or to throw your everything into your business and work as if you were working for the Lord. Work heartily is what it says, as for the Lord and not for men. So you should be a shining star in your workplace, not something that, sorry, see if I missed a lot of that. I'll come back to it. Not something that is, or someone that is a hindrance on the workplace, but you should be working as if Jesus Christ is your boss. You may have a terrible boss. I have personally had some terrible bosses in my years. Luckily, that is not where I currently am. I don't have terrible bosses, but I have been in a place where I did. And that can be difficult to navigate. But what we are called to do, well, you may be called to leave that job and go somewhere else. I'll say that. What I'm saying is not a marriage contract, but I am saying that if you have been hired for a job and you are going to attend that job and not quit and go somewhere else, but you intend to stay there in the condition that it is, whether you have a terrible boss or not, well, what you are committing is to work in that job like you're working for the Lord, whether you like the job or not. You should be putting effort into it. You should be that shining star of an employee. You should be that shining star of a business that your customer comes into, that when they see you working, they should see a reflection of Christ. All the fruits of the Spirit being poured out through you in your job, loving other people, especially, having patience, kindness. You know, I've had some terrible customers over the years, and having patience and kindness with them can be difficult. Loving some people can be difficult, but we're called to uphold this word, and we're supposed to be examples, the salt and the light. We sh- People should look at us and see the work that Christ is doing in us and the fruits that that produces. So be that employee, be that boss, be that, shop owner, business owner. Don't just show up, show out. So I see we've had a couple comments that I'm going to go back and read about what we were reading earlier and most likely currently. But she said, I saw a video of someone that said, my trauma triggers, this is talking about as a parent, trauma triggers are my responsibility and not my child's. My child should not feel like they have to be worried about my triggers. These are for me to deal with and heal from. And that is so true. Our
Yeah,
burdens should
absolutely.
not be our children's burdens. We shouldn't expect our kids to act a certain way simply because we feel triggered by something, is the next thing that she said.
Jelly Roll has a song similar to that. Like, I can't remember exactly word for word, so don't quote me, but he talks about do not make your kids carry your cross. Like, something to that order. But yeah, never push your trauma. And it's scientifically proven your trauma can already be passed down through your genes. So um passing it down physically and mentally is not okay at all already, because they're already dealing with enough. But yeah, I agree.
Very true. It's crazy how DNA works, truly.
Yeah.
So then she said, it's also important to remember the Bible was written for us, but not to us. A vast majority of scripture was written to someone. It was a correspondence like this letter to the Corinthians. It was written for all of time, but to the Corinthians. It was, to help the Corinthians with or I'm saying Corinthians, Colossians, with what they were dealing with in their present moment. But how much we can glean from what they were going through uh, is exactly why we have it here. So it's important to understand what the author was saying to the actual audience of that correspondence and what the overall lesson would be from that scripture, is what she said. And that's so true, which is what I referred to as in the, the context of when the Bible was written, how it was written, what was going on around them, what the Colossians were specifically dealing with. You know, Paul was writing to them for a reason. So taking all that into account is extremely important, which is exactly why I said you should not cherry pick verses. So we got through one section right there. We didn't even make it to chapter 4, and it's already time to be done. So I guess we're doing chapter 4 next week on Monday. So I didn't. I thought honestly that we were gonna kind of blow through that first part, but Lord had other plans, I guess. So anybody else have anything they want to add about it? A story specifically in their life, or just maybe a confusion or anything that jumps out?
Nope, just still context is key, man. When you're reading, especially these letters, like what was the population it was written to? Like just yeah, read the text before and after. Don't just read um, one verse and like feel like you understand what it's saying. Like but yeah, pretty much repeating what everybody else said already. But it's very important. Context is very, 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 very important.
Yes, yes, it is. And so many of us can get these things wrong. And if you try to
Mhm.
do it by yourself, you will get it wrong because we are not creatures of love and patience and kindness and peace. We are creatures of disorder and chaos and sin. Our human nature is sin nature. And God coming in and shedding his blood for us and washing us white, letting him be the gardener in your life, tending to the vine, cutting away what needs to be cut away and letting that good fruit grow through him. That's the way that you're able to show that love in the way that this is referring to. So don't try to do it by yourself, just like with anything else. Don't try to do it by yourself. It's just going to lead to more suffering and more heartache. Give God the burdens. Let him tend to your vine. Let him
Mhm.
teach you and show you so that you can show that love in the way that you need to. And so you can break those generational curses.
Another thing that I want to bring up a little bit, actually, I can't remember who the two TikTok guys are, but they're both pastors, but they have TikTok channels too, and they were on the same. One was on the other's podcast or whatever, and they were talking about the afterwards of like, yeah, they have some theological like differences, but like they made a point of like don't hate each other because of those differences. That's a problem that we have as Christians a lot, is we shame people because they may have a little their theology is still different or it hasn't grown to where it's going to be yet. You know what I mean? Like there's so much division in the church because if somebody believes a verse means something different or they're just haven't grown as much as you in their faith yet. Like it's just back to the context is key stuff and just there's always going to be theological differences for people and it depends on where you're at in your journey and just walk beside them in that journey and not judge them and tear them down because of it. I don't think anybody in here is like that, but a lot of people leave the church for this reason. So I
And
think
that's
it's a good
why,
thing to on, you know.
the I always try to bring it back, and when it gets too far into the weeds,
Mm-hmm.
try to bring it back to the main thing is the main thing. What did we get called to do? We got called to love God and love our neighbor. show Christ's love to those around us and share the gospel with them, share the light that we have inside of us. You know, we have a Savior that died for us so that we can be called up eventually into eternity with Him. And while we're here, we get to learn about Him and learn to build that relationship with Him, learn to love Him, love God and love others. The main thing is the main thing. There's a lot of gray area, and people
There
love to
is.
debate about gray area. But if it ever gets too uncomfortable for anyone, I'm not talking about in this channel or in this Bible study, but if it ever gets too uncomfortable in a conversation, that you're having with somebody, and they're trying to debate or something like that, just take it back to the main thing, and that is,
Mhm.
God died for me, and I know that He died for me, and He told me, to love Him and love others, and to share His good news with those around me. I mean, yes, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of weeds, there's a lot of confusion. We're seeing through you know, dim glass, but we do know that. We do know that He died for us, that He raised from the grave. Hallelujah. That He sits at the right hand of the Father, that He intercedes for us, and that He has called us to love Him and love others and share His good news. Those are the basics. And if you're ever in a confusing place where people are trying to get you tripped up, or where there's a lot of,
Nuance.
yes, nuances and people that have been maybe studying it a lot longer than you, or maybe they just like to debate in general.
Passionate about it.
Yeah, don't feel like you are any less than for not being able to debate like that. Just remind them that, hey, I'm I'm a Christian and I love God, and I'm learning about Him and forming that relationship every day. And these are the things that I do know. And I know the main thing is the main thing. So try not to get stuck in the weeds, unless you want to be stuck there and you are the debater. As long as you're doing it in a good Christian loving way, then that is fine. But don't be the stumbling block for somebody else because you love debating, because that can be its own problem.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that is what I have for tonight. I guess we're not making it to 4, and that's fine.
Amen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow.
Yeah, I don't ever say that.
Watching a YouTube video now or what?
I know.
He is.
No, he's been streaming on Twitch. No, you're streaming on Twitch and YouTube right now. I didn't even know you had those. So
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
do all the
oh,
Bible
I
studies
didn't.
until
Yeah,
until we get
I
to the
didn't even
point
know,
where
so.
we do prayer requests, so then I stop the stream.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
So
Yeah, all of Seawolf's chat wasn't showing. I only showed I was loading that. I saw this other stuff.
I will get a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I mean, I'm okay with this being on there, but just pray. Pray for my travel mercies tomorrow. I'm going to Chico for a post-op follow-up with my doctor. That's it.
Wish you well.